Hi guys, today I want to take you through a quick tutorial of how to make an animated bubble plot in R using ggplot2 and plotly libraries. If you, like me, have seen Hans Rosling's riveting TED Talk with the bubbles just appearing and rising on the screen, and the story he told us with that bubble chart, you are really going to enjoy this tutorial. But if you haven't seen that video, the link is provided in the notes below. Do check it out. So now what we're going to do here is we're going to analyze some data from US related to coronavirus. So we're going to look at the number of confirmed cases and number of deaths. Really sad data set, but let's investigate it. So we begin by including 5 of the key libraries that we're going to use for this analysis: dplyr, ggplot2, stringr, plotly, and gganimate. Let's run this chunk. We read 2 files. Both of these files have been made available on the GitHub link that I've provided below. I've taken this data from Kaggle. I've provided the link for that as well if you need to go there and look at some of the other work that has been done. So let's quickly read these files in. The files have a lot of information in them, but this is if you examine the data set, it's more wide than long. So basically, every date appears as a column. We will definitely need to change that before we do our analysis. Tidy up the data set. There are also a lot of columns here that we do not need. Another thing I want you to notice is that there are like sub probably cities within each province or state that have a separate row. So we need to combine them because I want to show data for the 50 states and how that changes over days in US. So for that, we select the columns that we need. We apply the gather function from tidyr library. The next step will be to group the data by province, state, and date variables so that we can summarize the number of confirmed cases or deaths by these two variables. Once that's done, we need to do some cleaning on the date variable, remove the x's, remove the dots, change that to dash, and make it into a date format so that we can use that for our analysis. Finally, because there are no known cases, the data actually captures data from 22nd January, but we haven't had any cases in US before, let's say, March. So I'm going to keep data only after 26th February for this. So we run the same set of procedures on confirmed cases. Once you run this chunk, you will see that there are about 2,200 observations and three variables in both these data sets. Then we go ahead and combine these two variables. You can also left join them. It does the same thing, and just quickly run this chunk. Yes, so we have about 2,200 rows and 4 columns with a row for each province and state for every day with the number of confirmed cases and deaths in US. So now comes the part where we plot this data. So we take this data set, we pipe it to the plotly function, we assign the x value to deaths, we assign the y values, the size, the color, to deaths, whatever variable you choose to do this to, and then we assign the frame variable to be date. We assign the text, the type as scatter. So basically this is not a bar plot, this is a scatter plot, and that's what we specify here. Now if you run this chunk, you will see that all the data appears together in one go. As you can see here, these are all markers for New York. So everything appears together, and also a lot of data gets gathered here around the 0. So let's go ahead, add the animation related options such as animation underscore opts and animation underscore slider, and we also transform the x-axis, y-axis, and the size to be able to understand the data better. So if we run this particular chunk, what we will get is a plotly HTML widget. If we run that, we will be able to see this data appearing before our eyes on the chart. So again, the number rising massively. Yeah, really sad data. So now we can do the same process in ggplot. We take the data set, we pipe it to ggplot function, and we assign x-axis and y-axis, and then we assign to size we assign the number of deaths, color we assign to province underscore state, so that means we want a separate color for each state. So then we add the geom points, and we specify the opacity that we want. For size, we specify how much we want the size to vary, just to be able to see which are the prominent markers as opposed to the non-prominent markers. So if I run this particular code again, you will see that all the data appears together. There is no transition. So we add the transition by adding this particular line of code, that is transition underscore time. If I add this particular code, which is subtitle equals to date colon curly bracket open, frame time, curly bracket close. Basically what that does for me is it gives me the date here. So now this code takes a little bit of while to run, so it's going to take its own time. Um, in the meanwhile, I'll tell you about this particular plot here. So what happens in this particular plot is we have two additional basically stuff that we can apply to our plots, a shadow underscore mark and shadow underscore wake. And what that allows you to do is basically it helps you to play with how the past data appears on the current frame. For your transition. So you can see the past data appears as a shadow, and then you can specify the size of that shadow, and you can specify how long you want the shadow to stay. Definitely I've made it more marked for you to be able to see how this effect works. If you don't want this effect to work, this is how. Now you can see the chart has appeared on the bottom right corner of the screen, and you can see how the bubbles are flying. Really interesting effect there, but again, very sad data. I really hope that soon this turns into number of recoveries we see in US and world over. And very, very sad times, guys, but I hope you all stay safe. Please let me know if you have any feedback for me, any comments for me, any suggestions for me for what else I could discuss. My effort is to keep doing this more and more, and I hope you find this useful.